I'm going to race through this stuff, and I apologize if I go too fast and there's not a lot of time for questions. But I'm so excited about all of this. I just wanted to throw it all out at you. I'm at Virginia Commonwealth University, an institute within Virginia Commonwealth University called the Virginia Institute for Psychiatric and Behavioral Genetics. I'm an ethicist there. I'm chair of the clinical trials panel of the IRB, and I am vice chair of the social behavioral IRB panel. I also have a small private practice here in Richmond, and I'm an ITR trainer and contracted provider with ITR. I've been using ITR for 2 years, but I've been in the art therapy business for 30 plus years. And really kind of at the end of my career, when I retire from VCU in a few years, I'm going to just continue with my private practice. Okay, so I want you to go through this presentation with me today like an explorer, okay? This is how I think about research. All the images in all of these slides are from a recent trip to Juneau with my daughter, who lives there. I think that the images also kind of reinforce this let's explore together attitude. So here we go. What we're going to talk about: why collect data very briefly, some recent client survey information that Mary gave me, which is more qualitative, surveying our clients and getting their input. Recent findings based upon historic data, new data, a specific client example with their outcome data, future plans, and hopefully 5 minutes for questions. There may not be, but I just want you guys to have this information. So let's explore this stuff together. Exploratory research investigates research questions that have not been studied in depth. We know what we know, but we need to prove it, right? We don't know what we don't know as well. So we need to quantitatively prove all of these statements we're making in order to validate a method, in order to demonstrate its efficacy, and increase awareness of the model and the method. So how do we do it? We collect outcome assessments on all treated. We analyze data, we publish data, and we get funding to do more research. Specifically, the gold standard would be great, randomized controlled trial, which is what we're thinking about and working on all the time. So some client survey data. There's a missing in this, a small amount was returned, but let's look at what we have, okay? So here's symptoms and satisfaction. The usual subjects are the symptoms we have here with people that have PTSD. But you see here, conversely, there's a 95% satisfaction rate with our clients. That's a good outcome. That's a great outcome. Symptoms after treatment. We have 90% symptoms better, and 65% of others noticed that there was some improvement. Again, this is all qualitative data, but this is good. Okay, ITR treatment compared to others. So again, the usual subjects, we've got IFS, EMDR, all the alphabet soups, as we mentioned before. And we have, how would you compare ITR to others? 90% said ITR was better. This is great. And these are all the ITR clients that Mary sent surveys out to. So that's all I'm going to talk about with that. Now we're going to move into previously collected data by Gant and Tinnen from 2010 to 2017 to recent findings. There was a longitudinal analysis in an extensive quantitative study done by Georgia Smith at University of Colorado. In this past year, she happens to be my daughter and sitting in the wings for questions on the statistics, because I am not a statistician. So she's the person who did these outcomes, and thank you to Georgia for the analysis. It's also in press. This is her thesis. So the information spans across 455 individuals who received ITR treatment from 2010 to 2017. The measures were collected pre and post-treatment, and follow-up measures at 1 week, 3 months, 6 months post-treatment. Many did not respond, which led to a high dropout rate of 61%. So therefore, these longitudinal models were used and compared to account for this high dropout rate. Okay, estimated change from baseline to 6 months. Our measures are here: DES, DRS, measure dissociation. IES is event specific, pre and post, and all those other times I just mentioned. The SCL is symptom checklist, which measures for many different diagnoses, and TAS measures alexithymia. You can see here that these 5 outcomes had significant decrease from baseline to 6 months. She compared these changes with thresholds used for diagnosis within each score and found that all decreases were clinically significant, often removing clinical concern and changing the bracket of severity. This analysis was done due to the high dropout rate to statistically prove the decrease in symptoms is valid and proven, okay? So basically what you see here is there's a 40%, 40 to 50% decrease in the DES symptoms, 50% average on the DRS. In the impact of event scale, we have about an 18-point decrease. The SCL, about a 30-point decrease, and the alexithymia is the smallest, which is interesting to me, at a 7-point decrease. That I'm also seeing in my data that TAS goes down slower than the others for me as well. The brackets are smaller.
So that decrease.
All right, she's interrupting me because she's here listening to me talk about her data, and she's correcting me, but I think I got most of that right. Here she's got estimated outcomes over time. This is important because this plot shows the estimated score at each time point. As you can see, for each measure, we see a large dropout from baseline to post-treatment with little to no change after treatment. So what we're saying is this is long-term treatment. It's working and staying healthy. And once again, the statistic analysis here was to account for the missingness in the data. I'll have her talk more about this if you guys want more details. Okay, so recent outcomes. I've collected over the course of me doing working with my clients, a lot of pre and post outcome measures with my private practice and my ITR clients. And I only am presenting people today that have completed treatment and a certain amount of post-treatment outcomes. That is been analyzed by my daughter, Georgia Smith. This data is unpublished. I do plan to write it up. This data represents all clients that completed ITR treatment in the past year, from March 2022 to March 2023. Once again, completed treatment and have enough data, outcome data to report. That's 12 months, 12 people. Interestingly enough, 66% of them worked remotely via Zoom with me here in this office, and 33% worked in person. The assessments that I used are the PCL-5 for PTSD diagnosis, the trauma recovery scale to measure their recovery, the DRS for dissociation, and the IES, the impact of events scale. The demographics on this sample are obviously a very strongly female, 83%, very strongly white, 83%. Most of them had previous treatment, 91%. The average age was around 45. The total hours of treatment was around 20 to 25. Average follow-up hours around 3. Average ACE score about 3 with a low of 1 and a high of 6. The ACE score is the just the one-time measure that assesses how many childhood events you've had of trauma or abuse in your life. Types of trauma treated: death, disaster, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. You see that emotional abuse and sexual abuse were the highest. I've circled those because they also had the most hours of treatment and the most hours of follow-up. They also, let's see what else I can say about that. I don't think I want to say any more about that. We're going to keep moving here. So here's the data analysis that Georgia Smith did. The PTSD checklist, you see that they all came in with 1 score, and uniformly, they all went down. And most of them, if not all of them, actually all of them, are no longer having PTSD at a year. And you can see the same trend with the other plot graphs that I showed you in the data that Gant and Tennant collected. This is anything above this black line is PTSD. Impact of events outcomes. These are pre-post graphic narratives, event-specific symptoms. So we have more than you'll see that each person, depending on how many graphic narratives they did, will have done an IES for each story. Again, the black line is the clinical concern cutoff. We have a few outliers here. This person still had the abusive person in their life, and at 1 year was still having some ongoing abuse. That's what's going on with this person here. But you can see most of the people are going with this trend of long-term recovery, long-term positive results at a year. Trauma recovery scale. Again, this pink person is the person I just mentioned to you. This yellow person is now from the 6-month time point, orange person, from the 6-month time point to the 1 year is now experiencing a divorce. So they're struggling a little bit, if you will. But everybody else, again, is following this trend of long-term recovery out and after a year. So here's a specific client example with results. And I threw this in here because I think it's a really specific example that you guys can see, listen, see an externalized dialogue, see the graphic narrative, and see their client assessments as a really useful way of seeing these actual outcomes in action. This client is a private practice client outside of ITR who has agreed to share the data with you today. I want to thank you for that to him out there to the universe. He's a white male, 58 years old, completed 15 hours of treatment, 2 hours follow-up, in-person treatment in my office. He did 2 graphic narratives. His ACE was a 6. He has a history of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. His presenting issues were PTSD, alexithymia, and dissociation. He avoided all contact with me at my pre-screen. Was unable to regulate, was very anxious. Here are his assessments. His trauma recovery scale went from a 52, highest at a 93 to an 80, but this 2-month mark, and that's all I have is the 2-month mark with you for today. We see oftentimes a little bump down at 2 months and then it'll go back up. His alexithymia scale is now no longer alexithymia. Anything above 61 is alexithymia. So he's doing really well there. His PCL5 was a 56. He's now at a 15. This is excellent results. His dissociation scale was an 80. He's now at a 7. Okay, this is 15 hours of treatment in a weekend, Saturday and Sunday and Monday. His event-specific scales were his first one wasn't as high as the second one. This one I'm showing you today is the second one. This was sexual abuse. He went from almost a 50 down to, I think this is a 3, which is asymptomatic. Here is his externalized dialogue. I'm going to show you. Hopefully this goes well and this will play for you and you can, oh, let me stop sharing and share my sound. I always forget to do that. I
think you meant this is his graphic narrative, right?
Did I say that? Didn't I say that?
That externalized dialogue. That's okay.
Sorry. Okay, here is his graphic narrative. Can you guys see it now?
We see the slides still.
Okay.
This is a story that's never been told before. It's titled The Salmon Mike Story I Would Rather Not Remember. It has a beginning, middle, and an end. Little Jimmy was an innocent dude. He was trying to survive, have fun, and grow up to be happy and healthy. He wanted to ride his bike and play baseball. It was pretty much a normal life. 5-year-old Jimmy lived with his brother and mom in a trailer. He was pretty content being a kid. Jimmy's mom met Tom, and they got married. Tom and his 12-year-old son, Sam, moved in. At first, things were good. 8-year-old Jimmy was okay. Tom liked to watch Jimmy play sports, but he was not always there emotionally for him. But he encouraged Jimmy to play sports. 8-year-old Jimmy and Sam were playing one day on the bunk beds, and Sam kicked Jimmy off the bed. This startled Jimmy. It's not something he had ever experienced before. Jimmy's body braced, and he was surprised. In thwarted fight or flight, Jimmy's breathing got fast and labored. His face was flushed, and he wanted to run, but he couldn't. 8-year-old Jimmy could not believe this was happening. He was frozen and shut down. He felt numb. In an altered state, Jimmy detached and he felt like he was not in his body and watching this happen. Here was a guy 4 years older than him that he just met in his house, in his bedroom, kicking him off his bed. It was like a dream. In automatic obedience, 8-year-old Jimmy got up and listened to his radio. He tried to forget about it. Sam, his stepbrother, went into the other room. Jimmy just felt like, I just have to comply and do anything he says, like a robot. After this, Jimmy went out and he rode his bike. He was coming back online in self-repair. He was feeling better, like normal again. This addition to Jimmy's family was exciting and challenging for him. He wasn't really sure where he fit in. He tended to play the lost, silent child who did not want to draw attention to himself. He wanted to be good, so maybe he could get some love. Sam continued to physically hurt Jimmy during this time. This relationship was confusing for him. He looked up to Sam, but he always got abused by him. Jimmy mostly was frozen and in an altered state when this happened. Sam also stole from Jimmy during this time, which also left Jimmy in a state of freeze and altered state. Jimmy was so confused by Sam's behavior. He wanted him to be his big brother, but he wasn't. Jimmy was beginning to not trust people because of Sam. One day, when Jimmy was 9, he and Sam were swimming in the woods. Sam startled him because he was being sexually aggressive, and he tried to force Jimmy to give him oral sex. Jimmy was on hyper alert, his muscles were tense, and his body braced. Sam was forcing Jimmy to give him oral sex. In thwarted fight or flight, Jimmy's heart was pumping, and he wanted to run, but he couldn't. Sam was just so much bigger. While Sam was sexually abusing Jimmy, Jimmy was physically and emotionally numb. His body shut down in freeze. 9-year-old Jimmy could not believe this was happening, and he just checked out in an altered state. It felt like a nightmare. Jimmy was confused. He did not know what was happening. He had no words for it. In automatic obedience, Jimmy complied and gave Sam oral sex to get it over with. He did as Sam asked. He was scared. He went with it, hoping it would just stop. After the abuse and self-repair, Jimmy went and isolated and played basketball by himself. He was coming back online and felt ashamed, guilty, and dirty, but he was settling and coming back to himself. About a year later, 10-year-old Jimmy, 14-year-old Sam, his friend Mike, and his little brother were at Mike's basement, drinking and smoking weed. This was Jimmy's first time drinking and smoking. He was pressured to do this by all of those guys. For some reason, they wanted to get Jimmy fucked up. Jimmy drank a lot in self-repair. At some point during this day, Mike told Jimmy to sober up by taking a shower. Jimmy did this, and while he was in the shower, 14-year-old Mike jumped in naked with an erection, and he startled Jimmy. Jimmy was tense, his breathing was erratic, and his body was braced. 10-year-old Jimmy quickly moved into an altered state. He went offline. It felt like a dream. He couldn't comprehend what was happening or put it into words. Jimmy quickly got out of the shower before Mike could do anything to him, and he walked home in automatic obedience. Once Jimmy got home in self-repair, he threw up, coming back online in the front yard. His mom was angry, yelling at him, blaming him. She said, "You're drunk. Go out and rake all the leaves until you sober up." Jimmy complied in automatic obedience. From the ages of 10 to 16, Jimmy continued to self-repair on his own using weed, isolation, and alcohol. This went on for a long time. During this time, Jimmy also enjoyed sports, basketball and baseball. They were self-repair for him too. They made him feel part of a team, like he had worth. One day, 20-year-old Mike pressured 16-year-old Jimmy to go out drinking with him. They ended up in the woods. Drinking was self-repair for Jimmy. Out of nowhere, Mike showed 16-year-old Jimmy his erection. Jimmy was startled. He was tense, hyper alert. He was drinking and confused about what was happening. He didn't know how to handle this. In thwarted fight or flight, Jimmy was braced for something bad to happen. He felt stuck and he couldn't get away. He quickly moved into freeze and altered state while Mike had anal sex with him. Jimmy complied. He was robotic and on autopilot. He just wanted it all to be over. He wanted to end painlessly. Afterwards, they left the woods together, and Jimmy walked home alone in automatic obedience. He was confused and felt taken advantage of. He did not know who to trust. He thought Mike was his friend. Once home, 16-year-old Jimmy isolated. He felt dirty, guilty, ashamed. He quickly moved to self-repair into an altered state. About a year or two later, 18-year-old Jimmy and Mike were drinking together at Mike's new place. Jimmy continued to drink a lot in self-repair. While at Mike's drinking, Mike tried to give Jimmy oral sex, and startled, Jimmy braced, tensed, his breathing stopped. Jimmy said, "No, man, we're not doing that shit. I'm out of here." And he left. Jimmy left Mike's, and Mike did not sexually assault him, even though he wanted to. Jimmy was able to protect himself. 18-year-old Jimmy was never abused again by Sam or Mike. He enjoyed playing basketball and sports with his friends who were not sexually abusive. Jimmy was still numb, but he was safe. As you can see, Jimmy survived this story. It is over, really over. Jimmy wants to let it all go. Just let it all go. That was then. This is now. The end.
Okay, so this is a good example of somebody not being an artist, somebody thinking art isn't really my thing. I just am not things aren't working in my life, but being able to use the art, the graphic narrative, the representation, the repetition, as Chelsea was noting, to process this, timestamp this, organize this experience, and get it out and put it in the past and create this new neural pathway. His externalized dialogue, and I'm going to read it to you, on this specific story is a really great illustration also of what Chelsea was noting about the proactive and reactive parts. So I'll read it to you. Can we talk about the Sam and Mike story? Okay. How did that story make you feel? I'm confused, scared, untrusting. How does feeling confused, scared, and untrusting affect you? It makes me want to use drugs and alcohol and isolate. It makes relating to other people very difficult. What does it make you believe about yourself to want to use, isolate, and have difficulty relating to others? It makes me believe that I'm broken and inadequate, not good enough. I bet you feel that way. You were just a kid and deserve protection. Today, I'm here to protect and keep us safe. I will practice self-care. I will be present when I feel broken. I don't trust you. You've never been there before. I get it. I was never there before. Of course, you don't trust me. I got this by being your protector. I will always be here. Today, I'm in therapy, practice meditation, yoga, and trying to use less. I will listen to my needs. Okay, actions speak louder than words. That's okay, I get it. I will prove it to you. I will be the leader. I am here to love myself and you always. I am listening. I guess time will tell. I will show you that I'm here with time, patience, and actions. That's good to hear. So there's the relief, right? I am here to listen anytime. So who first came to play? Scared, confused, untrusting, right? Who came next? I want to use, right? I want to isolate the behaviors, the reactive parts. What was underneath that? Not good enough and broken. And what did we do? We led with the true self to provide solutions with I statements. We didn't point out from true self. We pointed in and said, I'm here. This is what I'm going to do. You can relax and you can sit in the back of the bus. I understand you don't trust that I'm going to do that. I understand that you don't believe me, but I'm going to do the best to let you understand that I'm going to lead from my true self. This guy now makes complete full eye contact with me when he comes into my office for follow-up. He calls me my friend. He says, how are you, my friend? He is like a different person, behaviorally, emotionally. Anyway, it's just a remarkable thing. And I just think to myself, 15 hours, where he's 58 and been struggling with this his whole life. Okay, so future plans, and I raced through, and I've got my statistical person here ready in the wings to answer any questions you may have, but future plans, a lot to do. We need to treat people from a broader demographics. We need to treat more minorities. We need to treat people from more social economic backgrounds. I'm working on a grant right now to treat people for free in my office, to get a grant to just have my associate that works with me just market and treat people in the Richmond area for free. Continue to collect outcomes and analyze data, complete a randomized control trial, quantify the efficacy of ITR for funding, provide evidence for our patients, complete a comparison with other methods, CBT, EMDR, publish, and coming soon, fingers crossed, a case study is right now under review with the Journal of Aggression, Maltreatment, and Trauma that I wrote up, and hopefully we'll be able to put that on our website for people to read and get ITR out there. So I want to acknowledge our clients who so bravely process their trauma and allow us to collect and share their de-identified data. I want to thank ITR Training Institute. I want to thank the ITR community of providers and colleagues who meet once a week in the 103 sessions to support each other, learn from each other, and share our work. And I want to just close with, this is an exploration, right? We need to break out there, and we need to prove this method, and we need to validate it, and make our own path here. This is an image of my husband and I climbing 3,000 feet straight up from Juneau, and we joked the whole entire hike that our daughter was trying to kill us. So sometimes research feels that way. Mary, I know, is learning how that research can feel that way. So anyway, let's explore this together. This is up on the Mendenhall Glacier, and let's try to get this done. So I have time for questions. So, and if you guys want me to go back to any slides, or you want to dive deep into anything, let me know, and I can go back, forward, whatever. So opening up to questions.
Thank you, Jill. That's amazing. And what a story, and what photographs, and everything, all of it is incredible. I'm sort of going back a little bit to what Juliet, I think, although other people were going there. There's so many components of this. How will you isolate in your research, let's say, the externalized dialogue from, like, not only are there components and the potential for comparative research with other methodologies, but yeah, do you have thoughts about that?
The only thing I would say is, right now the gold standard is randomized control trial for methods like this, and I think if we do a clean intervention, ITR, utilizing it the way we know is with all the elements in a very consistent fashion, with a comparison with standard of care, treatment as usual, with the same population, okay? And looking at outcomes, that's the comparison that we'll do right now. And I think that we need to look at ITR as the full package. So the grounding, the graphic narrative, the externalized dialoguing, that as a package is how we need to present it. In the future, do we want to pick apart and pull apart, like, is it the graphic narrative, or what is it the graphic narrative that's more useful than the externalized dialogue? That's coming, I think. But for now, I think what we need to focus on is the package, and promoting and validating the package of what ITR is. The good news in the data is that we're seeing really great outcomes, and we're seeing that they're lasting from assessments right after treatment through a year. That's great.
I think it's really significant when you're showing like how much difference there was, those charts. And Dr. Vander Kolk was talking about evidence-based, and how sometimes, like, he's supportive of a lot of research, but sometimes this evidence-based requirement keeps certain things out of the mainstream because it's so difficult to get. But he points out that as a gold standard, it's not very sparkly because evidence-based a lot of times means it's 10% effective. And so I guess I'm just putting out there that that ITR is much more than 10% effective. And I think that that's one reason why what you're showing is so outstanding. And if you had any comments about evidence-based, that would be fine, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that these outcomes I'm really excited by. I'm going to be honest with you. When I first, learned about this method and was trained in it, and when I first started practicing, a huge part of me was shocked to see the gains the people I was treating were making. I was like, wow. So that's why I started to focus so much on the outcomes, because I wanted to validate that. I didn't want it to just be this like ephemeral sense of like, wow, she's really better, or wow, he's doing great. I wanted to show them and my clients. I do this and share this. Hang on, let me share this. I do this and share this with all of my clients uniformly. I track it, I send it to them, I show it to them, I explain it to them. I want them to see how powerful it is as well. And it goes a long way. Is it extra work on my part? Yeah, but I just think it makes such a huge difference for my clients to see in black and white, on paper, that their questions that they're answering, that they answered, 10 hours ago, or 10 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, are improving. It's very, very powerful. So I'm excited about it. I want to write more of this up. I want to get more and more of it published. And I want more and more people to be excited about it. I want more people to be doing assessments and outcomes and writing this up and putting it in the journals, because my fundamental belief, the reason I focus on trauma and only trauma, is because somebody in my life couldn't find help. And I said, well, rather than complaining, I'm going to try to solve the problem. So the more people that can be healed and helped by trauma and ITR in their trauma, the happier I will be. That's the goal. So I just, don't think people have to struggle if they don't want to anymore. And if they're willing to do the work, let's get it out there and let's help people.
I just wanted to share how helpful receiving those charts are, and that that information is. So just wanted to reiterate that for a therapist, if they're not sharing it, it can definitely be eye-opening, even just for the client, right? To see that and see the results, even because sometimes it's like you don't always feel as great, but then you see the results, you're like, oh, okay, I am improving, and you do still, I feel immensely better, but seeing that's great and very helpful from my perspective. That's all I want to say.